3, 5, 4, 3, 2. How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another edition to Building Out Loud podcast. That's right, the podcast where we talk about building out loud. Really, we talk about building out in public, but building out loud sounded cooler, so that's what we're going to name it. I am one of your hosts, Matt Conwell, aka MacTheVC. If you follow me on Twitter, I am joined by my fellow partner and comrade, Liam. What's poppin', Liam?
Not much. Nice way to start a Monday morning.
Great way to start a Monday morning. Not sure if you're listening to this on a Monday morning, but we're recording it on a Monday morning. So that is what we're here to talk about. In today's episode, we're going to talk about mentors, how to find them, why they're important, and all the other things that come to the relationship between a mentee and a mentor within the VC startup space. So with that, let's get to it, everybody. So, Liam, do you have a mentor?
That's a loaded question. I'd say
it's not a loaded question. It's a simple question. It's a yes or no answer.
I'd say right now, no. But
have you had mentors?
Yes, definitely. And I'm saying no because we agreed to keep this in the VC entrepreneurial space. But definitely, working in a law firm and being a more junior associate and partner in a law firm.
And this is where we take a pause, everybody, to let everybody know that Liam is a lawyer, both in Canada and the UK. Really weird how he can do both of those and not the US. But he also runs a startup. What's the name of your startup, Liam?
Law for Startups. Very easy to remember, isn't it?
Lawforstartups.com. Get that, everybody. It's where you go to get legal information to help you about your startup. It is not advice. It is not legal advice. It is legal help. That is something to clarify. I personally am not a lawyer, so I'm trying not to get nobody in trouble. Liam is a lawyer, but there's limits to that. Anyway.
To be clear, whenever you listen to this, check out my website or come check out my LinkedIn to see if I actually still am a practicing lawyer. Because
absolutely,
that may change in the coming months. That might not happen. We'll see how it goes. Currently, though, I am working at a law firm, and we'll see where that ends up.
Lawforstartups.com. Back to your regular scheduled program. So, Liam, talk about your lawyers your lawyers. Talk about the mentors you've had over time.
Yeah, so I'd say there's a good amount. So obviously, when you're back in high school, you've got whether it's guidance counselors, people who were graduates of your school, older students. Definitely for me, I'm very weird. I don't know if I told this story publicly, but I decided to go to law school when I was 12, and it was largely because I went into debate camp and was better at everyone else than at arguing. And I realized that the profession where you make a lot of money arguing is in law. By the time I actually went to law school at 17, I didn't really actually have an interest in practicing law, but I was super, super interested in the way that legal systems essentially control people and limit their actions. And it's just crazy to me that there's this one system that pretty much orders the entire society. Point being, to get from me at 12 deciding that I wanted to go to law school to actually getting in, there are a lot of people former law students, former graduates of my school who I looked up to, who I spoke with, who mentored me. It's taught me how to write applications, what courses to focus on, what schools to look at, all those different things. Then once you get to law school, I wouldn't necessarily say I had any mentors, but when I started my company, I definitely did. One of the first things I did was go up to the next biggest city, go to co-working spaces, start meeting with people. There's a few people who had been through it before, who were probably in their mid 30s to early 50s, and they're people who were there for us all the time and who I could reach out to, talk about whether it was personal problems, work problems. And then now, as I mentioned, having moved on from that, when I was working for Jason was one of the things I can't criticize him for is he was always very available, and for the people working right under him, he was always there and always made a point of teaching people. So that would be one. And then moving to a law firm.
Time out. We're gonna do this little context catching up. You mentioned Jason. Who the hell is Jason?
Yeah, I'm hoping people who listen to this podcast have branched out enough to know of Jason Calacanis, but for those who don't, He's one of the largest investors in Silicon Valley. He hosts This Week in Startups. He hosts the All In podcast. Done many things. I think third investor in Uber? I don't remember. It's something like that. Third, fourth, somewhere around there. Invested in Robinhood. Invested in a whole bunch of companies. Very smart guy. And I was lucky enough to get a job working for him and directly reporting to him. And he was very good at understanding that the startup space is an ecosystem and understanding that a lot of it is information passed down. That at the end of the day, like, he is investing in companies so he can share his knowledge and information with them. And he is running a company, and the best way of that company operating successfully is for him to share his knowledge and information with those who work for him. So he made a really good point of making sure that he was there for people and making sure that he was teaching people and that people were growing under him. And I think you'll probably see that there's a good amount of people who work for him or who he invested in who go on to do pretty incredible stuff. So I'd say that's, in terms of recent mentors who very clearly had like a significant impact on me and the way I approach things. And, to this day, it's been almost a year since I left. And at least once a week, there's something I do or a problem I have. And something that he told me is what ultimately influences the way that I make a decision. So that would be like a major mentor for me and someone who like really helped guide the way I think about problems and approach problems and navigate different issues. And then, finally, working at a law firm, it's probably the industry with the most mentorship or training, in that the entire industry is literally just giving information to people. So there's a very, very established practice of more senior lawyers partnering with more junior lawyers and helping to essentially transfer information down. Because at the end of the day, as a lawyer, your job is to share information with clients, and older lawyers know more than younger ones. And, it's a whole ecosystem. So I say I've had like very incredible opportunity to learn from two more senior lawyers at my firm, one of whom actually was a professional coach for a few years. So she actually taught me a lot specifically about mentorship. She runs a course on mentorship. So, hopefully I can pass some of the knowledge she gave me on in this podcast.
Wow, you've had a lot of mentor, Liam, and you've been really lucky in your journey. For me, I too have had a lot of mentors along my journey. But very specifically, when you talk about as an entrepreneur, it was really important for me to have people in my circle who were both at the same level as me, but who were ahead of me. Right? Because the people who are the same level as you, you may not call them your mentors, they're your peers. But you learn a lot from each other going through the same struggles and figuring out how different people interact and deal with those struggles. But having those entrepreneurs ahead of me who I've met over time, those who have already been successful and exited, those who are 2 or 3 steps ahead of me, were massively beneficial because they were able to help me navigate things I didn't see coming or didn't understand. Or, when you get your first term sheet and like, what should I be looking for? Well, yeah, you got your lawyer. Thanks, Liam. How you doing? But you want to get another entrepreneur's perspective. You want an entrepreneur's been there. You want to know about the pitfalls. You want to know about mistakes they've made. Yeah, you can read a blog or read a TechCrunch article or what have you. But the ability to just pick up the phone and text somebody and be like, hey, I'm having this issue. You mind talking to me about it? And for somebody who's already been there and done that to be able to walk through that with you makes all the difference in the world. Same thing for me as a VC. And what I would say is entrepreneurship in startup world, as well as being a fund manager, it's very much a relationship-driven industry. When you're raising capital, a lot of it has to do with relationships. When you're hiring talent, a lot of that has to do with relationships. When you're getting partnerships, a lot of that has to do with relationships, right? When you're sharing deals, from a VC standpoint, a lot of that has to do with relationship. It's a very relationship-heavy industry. And having good mentors helps you grow relationships, because as you build the relationship with your mentors, they will open up their Rolodex. Oh man, I'm dating myself. I don't even know if the kids out there know what a Rolodex is. They will open up their networks to you. Great example. The very first ever enterprise customer I had for my first startup came from an introduction made by one of my mentors. Why? Because he was also the mentor of another company, a very well successful company in Silicon Valley, that he got to be our first client. Right? That was a relationship thing, and I appreciate that mentor so much for it. When I started raising my fund, I reached out to all the fund managers I had known over time who I built relationships with and asked them for advice. And I had many mentors give me a lot of advice on my pitch deck, on my pitch, on my strategy, on portfolio construction, all these things. And so having a mentor or having many mentors at many different stages who all have different viewpoints in life becomes immensely valuable. But then I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to us ramble on about our mentors and all the people who helped us and like feel like we're just grandizing right now. But Liam, how do you find a mentor? How do you get somebody to be your mentor? Like what strategies have you used?
Yeah, I'd say I've been, as you mentioned, like very lucky to be put in scenarios where I've had a mentor or someone who's been in a position where they have been willing to or would benefit from mentoring and helping me. So especially with like the last few I've had, whether in like legal profession or with Jason, it's been sort of happenstance more than anything else, and just based off being in a quote unquote corporate environment where mentorship is in some ways encouraged and commonplace. When I was starting my company, though, it was very much a dedicated outreach and trying to find people who, as you said, there's a group of men. I wouldn't necessarily call them mentors, but a group of friends or connections or colleagues who are around the same stage as you. And those are people that I think are the first that you'll find and the first that you'll connect with. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you can go to most online forums, back when Clubhouse was a thing, you can go there, Twitter, Inside, like there's all these places that try to bring them all together. I'm sure at some point we'll probably end up building one. Like there's enough of an audience on our platform that it makes sense to bring people together. That's one place where you'll find people who are probably around the same stage as you, maybe a few months, a few years ahead of you, and those people will have very, very good information for you and be able to help you with short-term decisions, maybe help you with your pitch deck or with very practical things. And then in terms of real traditional mentors, someone who's like 20-30 years ahead of you, at least for me, the biggest factor that I found being a success is finding something that connects you with someone. So whether that be the school you went to, the accelerator you're in, the VC that you have, just something that connects you with someone that would give them a reason to, be proud of or, take some sort of personal pride in your success, and reach out to those people. And most of the time, especially I find when it comes to entrepreneurs and VCs, they're more than happy to help because they know what it is like being at the early stages. They know that a lot of it is gaining information, gaining knowledge. And once you sort of open your eyes to what the reality is, the world is a lot easier to navigate when it comes to starting businesses and investing in them. So it's really about gaining that initial contact and information. And I think the best way to do it is find something in common between you and the type of people you want to be with, and then target those people that have that one institution or one sort of aspect in common with you.
So for me, I take a slightly different approach, right? Like as you're in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, startup ecosystem, VC ecosystem, you go to a lot of events, you do a lot of networking, you meet a lot of people, and along the way, you're going to meet people that you gravitate to, people that you like, people you want to learn from. What the approach I've always taken is I start off asking those individuals for a meeting. Can we get a coffee? Can I take you lunch? Can we get a Zoom? Can we get a phone call? What have you? It's usually a 30-minute meeting. and you go through the meeting, you learn about each other, you ask them a bunch of questions about themselves, because people like to talk about themselves. And then at the end of the meeting, you ask them if we can do it again. And if they say yes, then it's on you to follow up and schedule that next meeting. And you continue to schedule meetings, you continue to get to know them and continue to learn from them. And you'll look up one day and it's been 6 months, a year, maybe longer. And you've now developed this rapport and relationship where you can be like, hey, if you're a startup founder, you'd be like, hey, I'm working on this pitch deck. I'm putting down a list of advisors. Do you mind if I put you down as an advisor? Now, you've never had an official advisor relationship or mentor-mentee relationship, but you have built the relationship where they have been advising you. And very often the people's like, yeah, we've been working together for a while. I've seen how you've grown, sure. Or you can be like, hey, I was talking to somebody and they were asking me about, mentors. And I wanted to mention you, but I know we've never had that conversation. Is it okay if I call you my mentor? Somebody like, well, you've gotten to know me over the last year. We've been working together. Yeah, sure, that's fine. And the key in this strategy is I never ask people directly to be my mentor or advisor up front. I organically build the relationship to the point where it just naturally happens. And I do this for a very specific reason. And for anybody out there who ever comes across me and wants me to be your mentor, I suggest you go about it this way too. I never ask people directly to be my mentor because very often these are very busy people. And so the idea of them becoming a mentor is, in their mind, is like, I need to allocate more time to do this other thing. It's just one more thing to add on my plate. And for very busy people, that is something they are not excited to do. Asking for another phone call in, 6 weeks or in 3 months, oh yeah, we can have a call in 3 months. That's fine, right? It becomes less of a lift in their mind, right? And so that way I can start to build a relationship and rapport without making them feel like there's an obligation to it. But you end up getting the same outcome in the end. This has worked for me time and time and time again. And it's the way I've been able to build relationships with many of my mentors. Just a tip for those out there, because if you come to me and you're like, yo, Mac, I'm looking for a mentor. Will you be my mentor? My answer is probably going to be no, because I don't have time to set up some like standard relationship with structure and all that. I ain't got it. But he's like, hey, Mac, I really love the conversation. You think we can talk again in a couple of weeks? Sure. Shoot me an email. Let's set up some time. Those are two very different things, but you get the same outcome.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think I probably take a slightly different approach in that the first email I tend to send, if it's a cold email, let's say to like an alumni of my high school or like my university, and it's someone who I want to learn from and be a mentor, but haven't met before, it's generally asking them about something that they've done. So one example would be Neil Hunt, who was the chief product officer of Netflix, was an alumni of my university. And when we were starting our company, we were working on some tech that was relatively similar to something Netflix had tried and given up on. And he had actually led the project where they tried to build this tech and they decided it just wasn't financially feasible. So I think the first email that we sent to him wasn't asking for like money, wasn't asking him to mentor us, wasn't asking really for anything, but it was just like, hey, Neil, we're working on this thing. We think that we've got a breakthrough. We know that you've worked on it in the past. Like, would you be interested in like just chatting about what we're working on and your experience in this area? And he agreed, I think, to like 30 minutes just to talk through, and largely I think on his end, it was curiosity. Like he had spent months or years working on this tech and found that it probably didn't have, the necessary market support to actually continue with or technical feasibility. And we were sort of messaging him being like, hey, maybe something's changed. Do you want to have a chat? And I think we had maybe 2 or 3 chats more after that. Like it wasn't necessarily like a formal mentorship, and my CFO actually had a much closer relationship with him than I did. But I think that's like getting to a very big fish, someone whose time everyone wants, whose money everyone wants, and finding something that interests them and like makes it worth their time. And I think that's really the key. Like you mentioned, having it not be something that seems like a burden. I think you can also go a step beyond that at times and try to make it interesting for them. Try to make it uh, something fun, something that piques their curiosity. I know when I first met like Dan Scheinman, his wife is an alumni of my university. We met at an alumni event in like the Bay Area, and everyone wanted to talk to him. He like was the first investor in Zoom. Made I believe 9 figures on that investment. Very, very smart guy, and everyone was just going up to him, wanted to sort of like ask him for money, ask him for favors, whatnot. And I just went up to him and like I think he already knew who I was, and I just asked him like we wanted to have a chat like somewhere other than this alumni event. Like, do you want to just get out of here and have a chat sometime? And we ended up going for lunch, and his biggest interest was like, how does someone who studied law end up running like a tech company that has nothing to do with law? Like, how did you get to here? Like, what is your story? And he's an early pre-seed investor, and obviously he invests in people more so than ideas or companies, because he's making a bet in the very, very early stage. And he was just intrigued genuinely like by the story. He'd heard from other alumni like what we were working on and who I was and the way I'd gone about things. And from there, I think I messaged him like a few more times, and to this day it's someone I feel very comfortable just saying email to if I needed something. And I think giving him that opportunity to ask his questions, to pique his curiosity, to as an investor to really drive the conversation in the way he wanted to, and to give him a chance to really like enjoy the conversation and not make it all about me. I think we kind of got to a point like 3/4 of the way through lunch when we both realized like I hadn't really even pitched the company, explained what we were doing, like none of that. We just been talking about me, like my past. And it's the same with the investor who ended up actually putting the seed money into my company. We walked out of that investment, like that first meeting with him, completely convinced we were not getting any money, because we spent the entire time talking about like my family, my co-founder's family, what we'd studied, why we were working on the company. Like we spent so little of it talking about the potential of the company, the future, like all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I kind of came to realize that certain investors and certain people are interested in different things, whether that's interested in people, interested in tech, interested in engineering, interested in law. Like, and if you want to build a relationship with someone, especially someone who, if we're being honest, like their time is more valuable today than yours is, often having that first conversation be on topics that are interesting to them, that pique their curiosity and sort of provide a lot of value to them to learn about you or to share information that you have, that can tend to lead to a strong foundation for a relationship where, later on in the second, third, fourth meeting, you're then getting to the point where you're benefiting from the relationship and you're getting all the advice and the mentorship that you were looking for. But I think on the first meeting and the first or second meeting, or potentially even like the first few months, letting it be very much a conversation around their interests and what connects you to them helps build like a very strong foundation that lasts for a long time.
100% agree, and I have to say that Dan is an amazing person. So I'm a huge fan of his, and I count Dan as a friend so far. Maybe an investor one day, but that's a longer story for another day. Love you, Dan. Shout out to you. We should probably put his Twitter handle in the show notes just so we can get him some traction and make him annoyed, but that's what we are here for. With that, I hope today's episode has given people some different perspectives on how to go about getting mentors. I think we've ran a bit long today, so maybe we'll spend part 2 talking about the power of mentors and how they can really help change the course of your career, your company, or your fund. So with that, any last words for the folks, Liam?
Yeah, if we do put Dad's Twitter, please don't bombard him with random requests for mentorship. He's a great guy, but I think build a relationship organically with people. I wouldn't personally recommend just spamming someone just because we mentioned that he might have provided us with some help.
But if we get him a couple followers, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm going to say that. Well, thank you everybody for joining us again for another amazing edition for the Building Out Loud podcast. Make sure if you got any questions, if you have any notes for us, if there's any topics you would like us to touch on next time, be sure to email us at buildingoutloudpodcast@gmail.com. That is buildingoutloudpodcast@gmail.com. We try our best to get in touch with folks and respond to you. And who knows, your question might end up on the podcast next week. Gotta wait and see. But with that, I hope everybody's enjoyed this one. See you next time. Peace out, y'all.